from Beth's Creative Stitchery. I want to spend a few minutes and talk to you a little bit about how to buy a sewing machine. Now, this is not a video on the classic, the rules of going into a store and buying a machine, turn your cell phone off, bring your fabric samples with you, leave your kids at home, give yourself an hour type of talk. It's really more about the things you need to think about before you arrive to a store. What's going to happen is a good salesperson is going to qualify you. And qualifying you, all that means is they're going to ask you they should ask you a series of questions that might help to target you toward the machine that's going to fit you best. There have been some big changes in the sewing machine world in the last 10 years. Our store sells Bernina sewing machines. I've been selling these Bernina sewing machines for over 35 years. In fact, I can distinctively say that I am the oldest Bernina dealer in the state of Ohio. And I don't mean I'm the oldest. I started when I was pretty young. So I have found a handful of criteria that if a person can decide based on a few of these criteria, it can focus on a section of machines as opposed to an entire line of machines, because it can be very overwhelming. Bernina line itself has increased dramatically, and I am actually personally finding it more and more difficult to put someone into a machine because we have so much to choose from now. And as statistics and studies have shown, sometimes too much choice can be debilitating. So if before you arrive to a store, you can think about a handful of things, it will knock out some of the clutter that you're going to be surrounded with. So first of all, one of the things that I would recommend you think about is size. Well, about 15, 20 years ago, there was a little bit of a trend toward smaller machines in the lower price category. Part of that had to do with many people in this particular price category might be storing the machine away in a closet, so hence it had to also have a handle, which just about every machine on the market does. But a smaller machine is easier to pick up off a table, put it into a closet, or also using it for travel. So many of the machines below about $1,500 had a smaller opening to it. And then, of course, we stretched all the way up to heads that were considerably larger. And this particular head frame change was motivated by two different types of sewers. The first one was the embroiderer, who wanted a significantly larger hoop to sew in. And the quilters, they wanted more space within the machine itself to put their quilts in. But as a general rule of thumb, people also found that everybody likes more space in their machine. So more space in this area right here that sometimes now, I've heard the word harp being thrown around, which is a perfectly acceptable word. And that is that space from the edge over here to the needle point. So the big thing you want to think about is, well, what size do I want? Am I looking for something smaller, portable, put in a closet, or I have a limited amount of space, or I just want, a normal kind of machine? So, and then of course we go all the way up in the Bernina line. We have everything right now from 6.5 inches to 12 inches. So think about what you already own too, because if you already own two machines that are 7 or 8 inches, why buy a third machine that's 7 or 8 inches? That's redundant. That's like having the same size pot in your kitchen. You don't want to have a 2-quart, 5 2-quart pots in your kitchen. You want to have, a big one, a medium one, and a small one. So you might want to consider the fact you might want to get a bigger machine, because everybody's finding that they love this bigger space. It doesn't matter what kind of sewer you are. Or maybe you're looking for a smaller machine for portability. You might be taking it in an RV. You might be putting it in a second home or taking it on vacation. It just makes it easier to port the machine around. So first and foremost, size. What kind of size are you looking for? The next thing you might want to consider is, are you a quilter? And if you are you possibly looking for a stitch regulator? With Bernina, we've had the Bernina stitch regulator since 2005. And this little device goes onto the machine and helps to even out your stitches so you have more consistent stitching for your free motion work. I think this is a fabulous device for what I call the mere mortals of the quilting world. So if you don't do tons and tons and tons of free motion quilting, this little device right here could be the little thing that helps elevate your quilting a little bit. You might also, if you own a Bernina, own one of these. This is basically a $900 add-on. Many of the machines today, they either come with the stitch regulator or you can plug the stitch regulator into it. So if you already own one, there's really no need for two of them. So you might already say, I would like a stitch regulator, or you may say, I already have a stitch regulator and would like to continue to use it on the next machine. So this is a device that you definitely want to think about as far as if this is going to be a possibly functional tool, or that you already have one that you want to add to another machine. The third thing that you might want to think about is, do you have any interest in embroidery? There are some people that love embroidery, and there are some people that have no interest in it. So an embroidery module can actually add on to the price of a machine anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000, depending upon what size of machine that you would be thinking about purchasing. The fourth thing that you might want to consider is dual feed. Dual feed is like a little finger on the back that helps to kind of coax the fabric along. Do not confuse this with a walking foot, because they actually function, though you might want to say they kind of function similar, they still are a little bit different. A walking foot is like having a set of feed dogs on the top that matches your feed dogs on the bottom. And together they grab the fabric and pull it through your machine. So if you tend to do things like work with battings, walking foot is invaluable. They make walking feet for just about every single solitary machine on the market, and they are very valuable for most sewers. They're great for anything that I say has squish factor. So anything where the fabric can actually, if you put it between your hands, you can actually move it independently. That's where a walking foot can be of great value. A walking foot is really great for things like terry cloth, velvets, complicated plaids, and if you do anything through batting type fabrics. So even if you tend to work with batting a little bit, a walking foot is a great thing to add to your machine. But a dual feed is actually built into the machine, and it's one of the features, and you can't just add it as an aftermarket thing. And what it is it's a little finger that actually kind of comes underneath the back of and fits into the back of the foot, and it kind of helps to feed the fabric. As a general rule of thumb, if you're going to quilt a quilt, you're going to find that a walking foot will probably do still a superior job, because it is that full feed contact with the fabric and pulling with the feed dogs. But a dual feed is a nice stitch aid to have on a machine. The fifth thing that you probably need to think about is, what is your budget? But you also need to be realistic that you may say to yourself that, oh, you would like to spend maybe $2,000 for a machine. Don't be surprised if you end up spending maybe $3,000 or even more. It's still pretty rare when someone comes in and says that, oh, they only want to spend $1,000 and walk out with a $10,000 top of the line machine. You need to be realistic in the fact that sewing machines range anywhere from about $89 to well over 5 figures, into being $15,000 to $16,000 for a sewing machine. So by knowing approximately what your budget is and realizing if you haven't shopped for a long time that the prices might be a little bit higher than what you think, or you might be able to get what you want if you think ahead of time, maybe for less than what you think. So think about the 5 things that I suggested to you. Size. You can get anything from 6.5 inches all the way up to 12 inches. Do you have an interest in a stitch regulator? Are you a quilter? How about embroidery? Does that hold any interest for you? Are you interested in a dual feed type system? And last, what's your budget? If you at least have an idea about how these 5 things would impact your sewing, a good salesperson can do the rest. And then this way, they can show you a handful of machines that it's easier to choose what you might be looking for than showing you a whole bunch of machines, and then you become overwhelmed with the possibility and the choices. So I hope this helps you out and that your next sewing machine shopping experience will be fruitful and you'll go home with a great new product.